Hello, and welcome to our series, Conversations on Zionism, Reclaiming the Narrative. I'm Russell Robinson, Chief Executive Officer of Jewish National Fund USA. The time has come to be the voice of what Zionism really is. We're exposing the beautiful and diverse facets and facts of Zionism. Join me on this journey, together with Conversations on Zionism, Reclaiming the Narrative. This is Zionism. I am really excited to be moderating a panel today of people who represent our future. With me today are Natalie Arbatman, a high school senior from Mountain View, California, who is a member of Club Z since the 8th grade, where she has learned about her Jewish identity and how to be proud of her Jewish heritage and how to address bigotry and anti-Semitism head on. And Atlanta resident Barry Seitz, who attended our semester abroad high school program, Alexander Muss High School in Israel this past summer. She is in fact a second generation Muss alumni. Both her parents attended high school in Israel, and their first date was actually at the High School in Israel reunion. Please welcome Natalie and Barry. Welcome to ZTV, to the Zionism Studios. I am so excited because today I get to interview two of today's leaders. I'm going to start Barry from Atlanta. Barry, welcome to our show. Tell us something about you.
Hello, everyone. I am a junior in high school from Atlanta, Georgia. And this past summer, I attended the Alexander Muss High School in Israel, which is part of JNF now.
And was that your first trip to Israel?
No, that was my second trip to Israel.
And why did you choose to go to a semester abroad school?
Well, for me, HSI has always been part of my family. Both of my parents went on HSI. My great aunt was actually a director of admissions for HSI. So for me, it was always kind of known that I'd go on HSI. It was really important for me to go when I went, though, because I went probably 4 weeks after the most recent Israeli-Palestinian conflict ended. So I really did get that hands-on experience and really did get to learn about the modern state of Israel, being in Israel at that time.
And I think your parents met at a Muss reunion, right?
Yes, they grew up together, but their first official date was a Muss reunion.
All right, so see, that's a great thing. And Natalie, all the way from California, tell us something about you.
Yeah, hi, I'm so excited to be here talking to you, Russell. I'm from Mountain View, California. It's in the Bay Area. I'm a senior in high school, and I'm a fellow for Club Z, which is an education and advocacy Zionist youth group. I love it. I've been a part of it for about 5 years. Yeah.
All right, so let me start with you, Natalie, on that. 5 years ago, you're, in 7th grade, right? And you could have joined, were you involved in Jewish clubs? Why join Club Z?
Yeah, I actually had very little involvement in the Jewish community at all. I left Jewish day school in 4th grade. My parents from the former Soviet Union, so very secular. I don't belong to a synagogue or anything. But my mom just saw a Facebook post about Club Z, and she decided that I had to join. Our unofficial motto is best decision my parents ever made for me. But yeah, I joined really knowing nothing, having no involvement in the Jewish community. But after 5 years, I can confidently say it's really, a core part of my identity, my Zionism and my Judaism. And I have Club Z to thank for that. So.
All right. So wait, your mom tells you you're going to join Club Z. You agree with her because she's telling you to do it. But you're going to your first meeting. What did you feel? Here you come from a background that you must have met other kids that had much more of a background, less, what?
Yeah, I was utterly intimidated. All the kids there were in high school, upperclassmen. They had been in Club Z a long time. They knew just so much about Zionism, the Middle East, politics in general. And I came in literally knowing nothing. A lot of them, went to synagogue, studied Torah, knew a lot about Judaism. I came in knowing nothing again. I was also pretty shy, didn't speak up a lot, didn't like talking to people, and they were just so, outgoing and confident. And yeah, I would say really developed in the 5 years that I was there, but it was scary at first, but I'm glad I needed it. I needed it.
So you walk into this meeting, you meet this upperclassmen, you meet people with a passion for Zionism, for Judaism. You're coming. What did you feel? What was that moment that said, I got to come to the next meeting?
Yeah, so I would say actually my aha moment, my like, wow, I'm a Zionist moment came at their national conference, which is in January. So it'd been a couple of just regular casual meetings here in the Bay Area, and then went to a conference with people from all over the country. And it happened when one of the keynote speakers was talking, Ron Bar Yoshafat. He's a lawyer. He has a think tank in Israel. And he was talking about his experiences in the IDF and Israel, and he pulled out a slip of paper, and it was like crumpled and yellow and gross. And he said, on this paper, I've written, I remember it like it was yesterday. He said, on this paper, I've written the names of 12 people that I knew personally that lost their lives to the conflict in Israel. And I carry it with me everywhere I go to remind myself why I'm part of this fight and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I was tearing up. I was so emotional. It had been, a long weekend of learning and all of that. And I was like, this is my duty. This is something as a Jew that I have to participate in, because if not, I'm not fulfilling my role.
We determine our fate. Never again will our lives and our safety be at the mercy of others.
This is the real Jewish privilege, guys, okay? We have Club Z.
It's about preserving our history, which has been passed down to us from generation to generation to generation.
Shame on you, military! Shame on you!
Barry, you could talk about your parents went to Alexander Muss, and you were going to be going whether you wanted to or not, almost. But you made a decision to go. You grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. You take that leap to go to Israel right after the Arab-Israeli conflict. What was in your mind? What were you feeling?
I was excited. At the time, I attended a non-denominational private school in the Atlanta area. And I'd gone to Jewish day school up until 8th grade. So I was excited. I'd obviously to go back and really kind of reconnect with my Judaism, go back to Israel, meet Jewish teens, connect with them. And then after that conflict, I was excited to learn more about Israel and really learn 1948 to now, what's happened, why were we in the situation that we were in last May, and understand and have those tools to explain that to people back in the US when I came home.
Now, you go there where the conflict is just finished. In a high school moment, how many people did you go with your friends?
So at Muss, there were 2 summer programs that teach their signature course. There was one in early summer, one in late summer. I actually went, a lot of kids from Atlanta were going in the first one. I went in the second one. So I knew no one when I went.
No one. And so tell me that moment, because I want to explain to our viewers. So you go to Israel, you're in high school, you're coming from Atlanta, you're coming from private school, you're arriving in Israel, you go to a dorm, and you're the only one that you know.
I was so excited that I could not sleep the night before. I just wanted to be there, making these friends. Honestly, landing in Israel, just even after being on the flight, I met this one girl who ended up being my roommate, because the roommates are randomly assigned. And on El Al planes, it's a really cool feature. You can text each other on your screens. And we were texting each other the flight, and we just met each other at the airport 3 hours before. And I think that was kind of just the passion everyone was feeling for being able to spend that summer in Israel. Everyone was just so excited to meet each other. It barely even crossed my mind that I was going to meet people I never met. I was just so excited to be there.
And the moment, your aha moment in Israel. This is your second trip. You're going to school. It's a learning program. I mean, you're really not just traveling around Israel, you're learning about Israel. What was that moment for you?
That moment for me, I'd been there probably for 4 weeks. It was in the Negev one night. We had done a whole day of studies and we ended it with like a camel ride, and we were doing my whole cohort was doing campfire in the Negev. It was probably 9 or 10 o'clock, and we were just kind of all going around and saying something we were happy for. And we all just kind of started crying out of nowhere because we were just so happy to just be in Israel and have Israel. Sorry, I'm crying now. And that was definitely my aha moment for me. Just kind of being there and feeling the passion and the excitement and hope that everyone was feeling.
Wow, being part of the soil of the land of Israel. And Natalie, you now have had 5 years at Club Z. Your mother told you to go to that first meeting. What's happened to you and your family in this Zionist awakening?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have 2 older siblings who were never really involved with Zionism or Judaism at all. And my parents, they came from the Soviet Union, so they understood anti-Semitism and generally Judaism, but their connection wasn't ever really that potent. But yeah, after 5 years, for me personally, it is really just the core of my identity, and something Club Z teaches you and that I've learned on my own also is that Zionism is more than just the land. It's a people, it's a nation, a peoplehood. And that's something I carry with me a lot in everything I do, just remembering that I'm a part of a people. It grounds me. And I would say that's definitely extended to my family as well. They've been very supportive of all my Zionist endeavors. So, yeah.
So this is coming from you up to your siblings, to your parents?
I would say so. Yeah.
And you're a senior in high school, right?
Yes.
So how is Club Z, how is your Zionism preparing you for that next step when you're going to be going to university?
Yeah, it's scary, living on my own, forging my own path, figuring out what I want to do with my life. But Club Z, aside from the Zionism, also just gave me an interest in politics in general and history and international affairs. So it's certainly something I want to pursue in the future, and I know that now. But I also do not want to stop working with the Jewish community and for Zionism. I wouldn't be fulfilled if I was doing anything else in my life. But they've also given me a really strong network of teenagers and people around the country at different schools, different universities that, maybe I'll be attending. So I don't feel alone.
Great. And Barry, you're a junior, right? And so you have another year of high school. What did that summer of Mus High School in Israel, do you think, do for you to prepare you for tomorrow? By the way, I want you to share, you were in a private school, you were in a Jewish day school, you go to Mus, and then what happened to your academics at home?
So probably by the time I got home from Mus, I kind of realized that my priorities were changing, what I needed to learn about and what would make me feel fulfilled in my education was changing. And so in October of my junior year, I actually transferred to a local Jewish day high school in the Atlanta area. And for me, that was because I felt I was getting an amazing education in my other school. I had great friends, but I realized that I wouldn't feel content with myself and find meaning in my life if I was not learning Hebrew, if I was not studying the Torah, if I was not learning Israeli history. I mean, I'm in a class right now called Modern Jewish History, and it's like the most interesting thing to me. And it's something, no matter what we're talking about, I'm going to leave that class like feeling fulfilled. And so going forward into my college and postgraduate experience, I know I want to go to schools with strong Jewish contingencies, schools that have connections to Israel, that have programs with Israel, but also schools that have some conversation around Israel and to engage and further grow the Zionist movement.
So how are you, Barry, going to, because leadership is a big, important part of who we are as a Jewish people. It's leaders who are gonna take people forward. Tell me some leadership lessons you now know that you want to emulate, that you want to be taking forward.
I think the first and foremost thing is not to be afraid to defend Zionism, defend Israel, to embrace Israel and feel that it's okay to talk about Israel and support Israel. That's the first thing. I want like Jewish teens, Zionist teens, wherever, to understand like the importance behind Israel, not just because of our history, but also for our future. I mean, I think about everything that's going on now in the world, especially like in Ukraine and all the Jewish refugees coming to Israel. I want to be that leader. I think it's important to understand that you can talk about Israel and you can defend Israel, and then of course understand why we need Israel.
And Natalie, you, leadership, you're talking about taking this forward. You talk about leading your family in a Zionist. What are those kind of skills that you're going to take forward? What's leadership mean to you and to the Jewish community?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, what's most important to me moving forward is that the growth of Zionism and the success of Zionism, it starts with the Jews. And, as important as it is to reach out to non-Jewish communities to, try to convince people of our cause, so to speak, I think the single most important thing is strengthening the Jewish identity, especially in America, where I feel like the Jewish identity is definitely waning and people are not so connected to Jewish peoplehood and the Jewish nation. So I think it starts with the Jews. Zev Magin has a great essay that he wrote for Columbia University that basically says that the Jews have never relied on another people for our protection, for survival. We have survived so long because of a strong Jewish community, a strong Jewish identity. So I think it's important that we uphold that. And where I go to college, I'm definitely going to be trying to, make that happen, make that grow. And yeah, that's my goal.
So Natalie, I'm going to take the conversation, start with you on this. You're talking about the Bay Area. That's your circle of knowledge. You talk about the next generation. Are we in trouble? What should we be doing in your mind? And what do you think your peers are looking for?
Yeah, I live in an area where Zionism is not an accepted really movement. People are pretty hostile here about that kind of thing, and that extends to just Judaism in general because anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. So the non-Jewish world, I think, has a big problem just understanding what Judaism is, what Zionism is, just the fact that just to define it, it's the right for the Jewish people to self-determine in their homeland, and every other people is granted that right. And unfortunately, people who live in my area, progressives especially, who claim to value these things, don't apply it to Israel and to the Jewish people for some reason. So I think it starts with education there, just educating about what it means to be a Zionist, what Israeli history and Jewish history looks like. And for the Jewish community, I think it's, as I said, just strengthening it, making sure that young Jews understand what it means to be a part of the Jewish people, what it means to be a link in this strong and proud chain, and understand that their lives and what they do with their Judaism is important, and it's going to matter to the next generation of Jews. So we need to strengthen that identity by any means.
Barry, in Atlanta, what should we be doing? What's with you're in a Jewish day school now, but you came from a non-Jewish day school. You have a circle of friends. I'm going to talk to the Jewish community and the general, but the Jewish community. What should we be doing with your generation that we're not, and where do you think they are?
So speaking, a lot of my experience comes from from the Jewish day schools. And I think first I was taught from the time I was little to love Israel. Like I was fake floating the Dead Sea in pre-K. Like I was always taught to love Israel, but it was not until HSI that I was taught why I should love Israel, and not just be and to look at the chain of history and understand all of these reasons or why we should have Israel. So I think first and foremost, we need to be teaching the next generation of Jews, to love Israel, but also why to love Israel, and then most importantly, how to love Israel. And that's going to be by supporting Israel and defending Israel, whether that's on social media, in the classroom, wherever. I think once you understand the why, the natural love is going to happen. It happens naturally. I think it's a cause and an effect. As for the non-Jewish community, again, it's that education piece, like Natalie was talking about, really teaching that the diaspora fails us time and time again, and Israel's the solution to that for when there is no other place for Jews, and it's our ancestral homeland, and that's where we belong.
If I can add on, Barry, I love what you said about understanding why and how to love Israel. There's this like kind of idea that one of my educators at Club Z said a long time ago, but like if someone comes up to you and said like your mom did something really bad, in your heart, in your body, you know, that's not my mother. That's not my mother. And I think it's important to kind of have that same relationship with Israel, like you said, Barry. When people are attacking Israel, maligning Israel, vilifying Israel, it's important to remember that's not my Israel. It's an instinctual love. And of course you can criticize what they do, obviously, but it's this core idea that it's your Israel, it's your Judaism, it's your people. And yeah, to grow that in this generation of Jews is really important.
Yes, I love that idea of like our Israel, and no matter what people say about Israel, I think I'm always going to love Israel. I'm always going to support Israel. Of course, that means there's room for me to criticize and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this. Like, let's think about doing things this way. But I think the most important thing right now, especially for Jews in America, the American Jews, is learning how to love Israel and why to love Israel. So that way you do have this like instinct, natural love of Israel.
How should we be communicating to your generation?
I think honestly, word of mouth. I know I went to HSI and I came home and completely changed everything about my life to revolve around Judaism and Zionism. And the same's happening for a lot of my friends. I have friends who are now joining like youth movements in their hometown or getting involved with me bringing Holocaust education to their schools. So I think these certain programs like HSI and like Club Z, but then they have so much more outreach than just the children who participate. Like I've been to the BYO conventions, and they do a really good job of talking about Zionism and talking about Israel and inspiring people to become leaders and not even engage in those conversations, but start those conversations.
Natalie?
Yeah, I think that this generation, especially, what we crave most is identity, something to relate to, a community to be a part of. I think that's true for any teenager. And it's, yeah, like you said, Barry, it's really important that kind of identity is built from our age when we're looking for it, when we're seeking it. So it's important to get the word out there about organizations like Outsider Musk and Club Z, just to get people involved. And I also think that having connections to Jews with the same goals, ideas as you is also really important. You know, even if you're not super politically inclined and all that, it's important to know that there are people that are on your side that you can relate to, and you know, that's the bonds that we need to be forming.
So for both of you, we're at Jewish National Fund, and part of this program, but part of our agenda, we're building a village, which we're going to get you involved in giving us the feedback, the World Zionist Village, which we want to bring the Jewish people together for a new conversation. So you haven't met each other. So how important is it for your generation to establish a new conversation between each other? And what would you want to ask each other?
I think just everyone has a different reason, of course, of why they're drawn to Zionism. Like for me, it was something that it was passed down almost from my parents, of course, who both went to Mus. And I think understanding why Zionists are drawn to Zionism and why you find so much hope and belief in it only furthers like that understanding and of why it's so important. So I think gathering groups of teenagers who may or may not be Zionists, but who have completely different backgrounds, different completely different family experiences, I think that's a really good way to strengthen the Zionism.
Natalie?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think also it's important to put on emphasis on, if we're Zionist, we're Jewish. If we're Jewish, we're Zionist. And that means that we have a shared history. We are the same people. We are one people. No matter, if your parents came from Germany, bear in mind from the Soviet Union, some people have been in America for a long time. No matter what, we have a shared Jewish ancestry and a shared Jewish struggle. And it's important that we make that connection in our minds, that we're all just one people. And we need to start, treating each other like that.
And so if you have that one question, Barry, Natalie, to me, to each other, what would that question be?
I think just, why is it important for Zionism to continue in your geographic area? I think jnf-usa, obviously we have so many different states, the entire country that we cover. Why is Zionism important to your area, and why does that make Zionism important in my area? Kind of creating that community of communication.
So building that new communication, like you said, a BYO convention, Natalie, you get Club Z conventions, but young people want to talk to each other, don't they?
They do.
Absolutely. We're craving it. We need it. We need a connection, a community. And I would ask, once that community is formed, is what's next? What is our generation going to do more differently that's going to make this movement succeed, and that's going to make American Jews ultimately, successful and thrive even in America? It's a tough question though.
So I'm gonna kind of conclude on that piece, because I think that's a powerful statement. What's tomorrow? What's tomorrow is Natalie and Barry. What is tomorrow is the conversation, strengthening each other, talking about it. Both of you talked about the pride. You talked about the excitement. You talked about who you are. I had a chance. Natalie's traced her family lineage back hundreds and thousands of years. And Natalie, you talk about your family coming from the former Soviet Union, from a time when Jews didn't have that chance to even say they were Jews, to having freedom. And you've taken that freedom and become this leader that is going to take it forward. So tomorrow, what's going to lead us? It's called Natalie and Barry. And I will tell you that I have no question about our Jewish community of the future, because I know it's led by the two of you. So I want to thank you so much for being on ZTV.
Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Russell. This has been amazing.
So I look forward to your feedback and working with us. And so you should check your contract. It's a 120-year involvement with Jewish National Fund.
Sounds great.
To watch this and all of our past episodes, go to ZTV, our Zionism Studios YouTube page, and subscribe to get notifications.